Hopefully you watched the video, excuse me, the video that I linked to in an email and announcement on D2L, excuse me, on D2L the other day. I'm not gonna go over what was on that, hardly at all. I'm just gonna add a little bit of background information to the Greek theater, and then we're gonna jump into Oedipus. I think I did about the first 100 or so lines in that, so we'll pick up probably around there. Just a little bit more background information. These three, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, are the three great Tragedians, because I know you can't read that. Three great tragedians and three earliest tragedians of Greek drama. Aeschylus is kind of like the granddaddy, Sophocles the daddy, and Euripides the eldest son, so to speak. They each wrote a lot of plays, few of which survive. Euripides has, I don't know, it's something like 15, 20 plays that survive. Aeschylus only 7 or 8. Sophocles only 7 of his survive. Sophocles, we know, wrote over 120 plays because they're referred to in other texts. Okay, only 7 of those survive. Aeschylus was born around 525 BC. I don't remember when he died. He died after Sophocles was alive, because when Sophocles wins his first tragic award at the Dionysian festivals, he supplants Aeschylus. Aeschylus had kind of been winning them along to then, and he and Aeschylus were the two primary contenders in this particular festival. Greek drama gets its rise out of religion, out of the Dionysian festivals. These are festival ceremonies to the Greek god Dionysius, who's the god of revels and parties and things like that. Okay. Sophocles is primarily known, majorly known, let's put it that way, for these 3 plays. Okay, we'll be reading 2 of them. This is the order in which the plays performed. This is the order in which the plays were first performed. And therefore it is not, it's probably the order in which they were written. Okay? The play Antigone was first performed in, or right around 442 BC. Okay? Oedipus the King, your book gives a date of 430. It's not that exact. Sometime between 429 and 420. Okay? The final play, Oedipus at Colonus, isn't performed until 5 years after Sophocles dies, in around 401. So that's probably the order of composition, because that's the order in which they're performed. But if you look at the plays themselves, that's not the order in which the action of the plays occurs. Oedipus the King is the first play in the world of the plays. Then you have the play Antigone, which is about one of his daughters. Okay? Then you have the play Oedipus at Colonus, which is ultimately about Oedipus's death and transformation into a god by the other gods. The gods do that to/for him. Okay? There's another character in this play is one of the characters who shows up in this play, and that's his other daughter. She's leading him by the hand, okay, in this play as he's approaching his death. I'll probably have to mention some other kind of background stuff as we get into the play. One really important thing, and I don't remember if I discussed this in that previous lecture. One really important thing to remember is the audiences of at least this play, okay, Oedipus the King, or Oedipus, as you'll, if you look it up online or watch a YouTube, you might hear it pronounced Oedipus. For at least this play, okay, Sophocles' audience would have pretty much already known most of the plot, or most of the story, because Oedipus was a myth. Okay? Sophocles is writing this, notice, mid-4th century. The character, the slash story of Oedipus probably goes back at least 1,000 years before him. Just like all the stories of the characters and heroes of the Trojan War probably go back maybe not 1,000 years, maybe 700 or 800 years, because it's thought by many archaeologists and literary scholars that the events recounted, for example, in Homer's two epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, that those probably occurred somewhere around 12 to 1500 BC. In other words, the root, the center of those stories probably has a basis in reality. There was a real quote-unquote Trojan War. 200 years ago, we didn't think there was a real Troy. Now we know there is. You can go there today. And it exists in multiple layers. There were like 7 cities of Troy. One would be destroyed, another one would be built on top of it and such. Okay? So Oedipus, the myth, probably goes back to that time at least. Okay? So here's the point of that. The audience watching this play for the first time, they're well aware what Oedipus has done. Okay? Unlike most of you, because most of you probably have never read the play Oedipus the King before. Some of you might have, but generally, over 30 years of teaching this, maybe 5% of students have seen or heard about it before. Okay? So you walk in here, and you're like a blank slate when it comes to this story. They walk in and sit down, and they're kind of wondering, okay, so what's he going to do with the story, with the Oedipus myth? And he brings in some changes, which is why, I mean, the fact that they're familiar with it is one of the reasons why Sophocles can employ so much dramatic or tragic irony. One of those terms that's on the boldface terms that's on the pages in your book that you need to know, you know, I think up there on pages 1077 to 79, and there's another set of pages, 1120 to whatever the end of the intro to Sophocles is, okay? But dramatic and tragic irony, where somebody says something, not understanding, knowing the truth of what they say. The audience understands it, okay? Like when we talked about a good man is hard to find. And the grandmother says in the opening paragraph that she couldn't live with her conscience if she led her family into a place where the misfit was. That's dramatic or tragic irony. It's exactly because of her that they end up where the misfit is. Okay? So, the play begins with a bunch of people out praying in front of the altar, in front of Oedipus's palace. Pretty sure I mentioned this on the lecture, but I'm going to mention it again real quickly. One first, 1, 2, 3. Make sure to read over carefully in the section, the introduction, the stuff about Aristotle and Aristotle's On Poetics and what he says about drama and such. We'll probably cover some of it as we go along. Aristotle posited what he called the 3 unities. And he did this on the basis of analyzing Greek tragic plays, primarily Oedipus the King. The three unities: unity of time, unity of place, unity of action. What does he mean by unity? Completeness and wholeness. So, the unity of time. And again, he doesn't issue this as a law or rule that everybody must follow. He determines this is what everybody follows from reading all of these dramas, okay? So, unity of time. That means the action that occurs in a tragic drama occurs within a single 24-hour period. So from the very first word of the play to the very last word of the play, 24 hours at most have passed, okay? Unity of place. All of the action occurs in one location. What's that one location in this play? It's in front of the palace, okay? You've got a picture in your book that shows, this is essentially the theater. Here's the stage. At the back of the stage is what's called the scene, okay? This is the stage. Out in front of the stage is a round area called the orchestra, and these are the seats. You've got the picture of the ancient theater at Delphi. This thing would hold, if I remember correctly, from one estimate I've seen, 15,000 people for a production of a play in the 5th century BC. This is how important these religious festivals were. They were like, NFL games, college football games, not MTSU, but, UT, where you get 70,000 people or whatever, okay? So you've got the orchestra here, which is where the chorus does its bit. This is the stage where the people act. So this is the unity of place, not meaning the stage, but there's only one location. Later on, when we jump up to A Midsummer Night's Dream and Hamlet by Shakespeare, Shakespeare takes these and throws them out the window. Because we're going to see, for example, Midsummer Night's Dream, there's going to be two settings, two locations, and it's going to kind of go back and forth, okay? So unity of time, unity of place, unity of action, that means one plot, okay? What's meant by one plot? One major problem to be resolved, one conflict to be resolved, fleshed out, so to speak. What's the central conflict that we get in this play? We're told within the first couple hundred lines. There's a plague on the city. Children are dying, crops are dying, plants are dying, etc., etc. Okay? The word comes from Apollo, or the oracle at Delphi. Okay? It's an E. Word comes from the oracle at Delphi, which is Apollo speaking through a person. The city is a plague because there's a murderer in the city and the murderer killed the previous king. Find the murderer. Banish, get rid of the murderer. Doesn't mean you have to kill the murderer, but the murderer needs to be removed from the city, Apollo says. That's the central conflict. It's a whodunit. Who done the murder and the unraveling of the play, okay? So, people are praying, Oedipus comes up. And he speaks to the people, and he tells them, I will solve your problems. You don't need to pray to the gods, okay? And they pray to him kind of then. And he says, don't worry, I see, I know what's going on. And I'm going to use the PDF version. And he tells them, skipping a few lines, line 80 and following. He goes, I'm going to have you, I've already sent Crayon, okay, one of the other major characters, to the oracle at Delphi. Let me back up for a minute. So Aeschylus was before Sophocles, who was before Euripides, right? Aeschylus one of the major innovations he made to Greek drama is he introduced a second speaker. Now, for us, that's kind of like, how could you even have drama without a second speaker? Well, it was largely a monologue. Okay? So he introduces now where you have one person over here speak and somebody else speak. Sophocles introduced a third speaking character. When I say second speaker or third speaker, that doesn't include the chorus. I mean, single individual on the stage. The chorus is never on the stage. The chorus is down here, where in the area called the orchestra. Today we use the term orchestra not to refer to the place, but to the people with musical instruments that provide the music background and such. Okay? So Sophocles introduces a third speaker, which we will see a little bit later in the play. Okay? So, I've already sent Crayon to the Oracle at Delphi. Who is Crayon? According to the myth, let me just very quickly give you a brief overview. A king of Thebes named Laius is married to a woman named Jocasta. She's pregnant. They receive a prophecy that says the child in your womb will kill you, Laius, that is, will kill the father, and will marry and sleep with you, the mother. Okay? They don't like that idea. The baby is delivered, and he is taken to be left on a mountainside to die. By the way, that practice still happens today in parts of the world. India, parts of China. Okay? The child is taken and is left on the side of the mountainside, but another man comes and picks up that child. Feels sorry for him. The child has been had his ankles nailed together. So like a 6 or 9 inch nail is pierced through the outside of one ankle, goes all the way through into the inside of the other one and out the other side. Okay? If you know anything about human physiology and how we heal, once that pin is removed, the bone heals itself by adding a whole bunch of bone material. He's club-footed. That's what the name Oedipus means. And he walks with a limp. Okay? So, he's then taken to another town and is raised by the king and queen of that town. That town is named Corinth. It's the Corinth of the Corinthians letters in the New Testament. When the boy is older, I think he's about 18 or so, a party is being thrown and some drunk stands up and calls him a bastard. He doesn't just call him a bastard like you dirty rotten bastard. He means literally a bastard. He is not the son of his father. The boy's upset by that. He asks his parents. They say, he's a drunk, don't listen to him. Of course you are, son. But it still bothers him for a while. So he goes to the Oracle at Delphi. And the Oracle at Delphi tells him, you are fated to kill your father and sleep with your mother and bring to light a brood of children that should never be. The Oracle of Delphi has out in front of it a stone head. A stone that had written on it, know thyself. Know who you are, in other words, is what that meant. Okay? Oedipus is going there to find out what? Who am I? Okay? So the oracle says, you're fated to kill your father, sleep with your mother. He loves his father, he loves his mother, not that way, and decides to run away from home. As he's running away, he comes upon a crossroads. And there's another man coming towards him. This man is on a wagon, and he's got 6 guards. The man tells Oedipus to move. Oedipus tells him to move because they're both stubborn and hard-headed. They get in a fight. Oedipus kills all of them but one. He doesn't know the guy's a king. He doesn't know anything about him. The one escapes, runs back home. We're not told exactly how he gets home before the Sphinx arrives. Anyways, he runs back home and is sent out into the fields. Oedipus keeps going down that way, and he arrives at the city of Thebes. By the time he arrives at the city of Thebes, we're not told when, we're not told how much time passes between his killing of this man and his arriving there. A sphinx has arisen in front of the city. The sphinx, like the great Sphinx of Giza outside Cairo, Egypt. Head of a man, body of a lion. And the sphinx demands of Thebes tribute every day. And you can pay the tribute one of two ways. You can send someone out to try to solve the sphinx's riddle, or you could just send someone out to die for the sphinx to eat. Okay? Which they do, apparently, for a number of days, if not years. Oedipus arrives, and the sphinx tells him his riddle. What goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, 3 legs in the evening? It's a man. A baby walks on all 4. An adult walks on 2 legs. And when you get old and infirm, you walk with a cane. 3 legs. The sphinx disappears. Oedipus is welcomed into the city as a conquering hero. And because the previous king has died or disappeared, Oedipus is recognized as the new king, which means the previous king's wife / queen becomes Oedipus's wife / queen. And her name is Jocasta. And we find out the man that he killed on the road, his name was Laius. He killed his father. He marries and sleeps with his mother. Okay? That's what the audience all knows. What they want to see is how is Sophocles going to unravel the problem? Because he puts as the central problem not what I said was the central conflict. The central conflict is finding out Laius' murderer and getting that person out of the city. The central problem is, can you escape fate? If you accept the notion of fate, the Greek idea of fate, and according to the Greek idea of fate, you have the gods, you have fate, you have the world with us. The gods see us and what's going to happen to us. The gods see fate and what fate has in store. The gods don't control fate. And fate doesn't control the gods. Okay? According to this mentality, we're nothing but the plaything of both fate and the gods. Okay? So, back to who Creon is. Creon is Jocasta's brother. Okay? So who is Jocasta again? She's the queen of Thebes. She's his mother. So that makes Creon what? She is Creon's sister. That makes Creon his uncle, and now, because he's married to his uncle's sister, his brother-in-law. So that when he has children, they're going to be his children and his siblings, brothers and sisters. So, all that's to get to Creon saying, Oedipus saying, after line 85, he's late. Creon should have been back by now. And the priest says, oh, here he comes, looking off to the distance. Okay? So, Creon comes in, and Oedipus says, what message from the god? This is line 44. And he says, good news. Hardest things to bear, I tell you, even the hardest things to bear, if they should turn out well, all would be well. So, good news, but then he says something about hard news. But if everything turns out well, then all will be well. Okay? Oedipus, well, yeah, of course, that's like, stating a truism. But what were the God's words? What does Apollo want us to know? He asks. Well, if you want my report in front of the people, what does he mean? Put this in today's terms. Creon is bringing word. Let's use a previous president. Let's use a dead president. Creon is bringing word to JFK, okay, about some important answer to a problem, they think. And, except JFK doesn't work. Now, we'll use Biden. He's bringing news to Biden. The reason JFK doesn't work is because we didn't have the media when JFK was alive that we have today. So he's bringing this word to Biden, standing out in front of the White House. You would see, Biden and Creon, and what would be kind of right there? 50 reporters. Cameras, microphones, satellite TV, the whole 9 yards, right? It would be broadcast everywhere, okay? Would it be smart for the president to say, yeah, go ahead and tell me what you've heard? Right there, in front of the whole freaking world? No, it's not diplomatic. It's not wise. It's not prudent. That's why Creon says, if you want my report in front of the people, what does he really mean? Let's go inside. Let's go from here and step back into the palace where I can tell you in secret. Oedipus. No, tell everybody. I grieve for these my people far more than I fear for my own life. Now that's not quite dramatic irony, but it is so close. He's not said something about how his life could be in danger yet. Creon says, okay, here it is. Drive the corruption from the land. Okay? What corruption? How? What must we do? Oedipus asks. What's the source of the trouble? Okay? Creon, banish the man or pay back blood with blood. Banish what man? Murder, he says, sets the plague upon the city. Okay, so now we're getting a little more information. Whose murder? Who died? Whose fate does Apollo bring to light? Creon says, our leader, my lord, was once a man named Laius. Before you came and put us straight on course. He goes, yeah, I've heard about that. I never saw him myself. That's dramatic irony. He has seen him himself. All of the audience knows he's seen him himself. Okay? Because they know that he killed him. Even though within the world of the play, what is happening right here, they don't know that. But everybody here does. Okay? Well, he was killed, and Apollo says, pay the killers back. Where are they? How are we going to find it now? The trail of the ancient guilt so hard to trace. What does ancient guilt imply? How long has Laius been dead? Years. Here's how we know. Oedipus has lots of children. If I remember correctly, I believe he has 7 sons and 2 daughters. All of those sons are grown up and out of the house. The only ones that still live with him are the 2 daughters. So that means they're probably at least 18, 16 maybe, but to 20 something. So he has been ruling as king for at least that long. That's why you talk about cold case. This is a really cold case murder investigation now. Okay? Creon says, here. The murderer is here in Thebes. Okay? Oedipus, but where? In the palace, the fields, or foreign soil? And then he gets to the object of the question. Where did Laius die? Notice the first place he mentions. Did he die in the palace? Did he die in the fields? Or in foreign soil? I understand the murderer is somebody in Thebes, but where did the killing occur? It's interesting that he puts palace first. Why? One of Aeschylus's plays is a play called Agamemnon. Right? The audience would have been familiar with this. It would have been produced regularly. Very, very short background because this is important. In the Agamemnon is a Greek general, Achaean, that's what he's called, general, okay? He's going to lead the forces that will fight the Trojan War for the Achaeans or Greeks against the Trojans. Why does the Trojan War happen? Agamemnon's brother, Menelaus, is married to a woman named Helen, okay? Helen gets captured by a man named Paris, the son of the king of Troy. Well, the usual version is she gets captured. According to the Greek version, she runs off with him. She's not kidnapped. So she runs off with Paris of Troy. Little tidbit about Helen. There's a little competition among the goddesses, Aphrodite, Hera, and can't remember the third one. Athena, maybe. Aphrodite's the Greek version of Roman Venus, goddess of love, goddess of beauty. Athena, goddess of wisdom. Hera, queen of the gods. And it was, who's the most beautiful? And the response came, none of them. Helen of Troy was thought to be more beautiful. And they get angry. They cause the Trojan War because they put the idea in Paris's mind to capture her. Anyways, if I remember correctly, I mean, it's been a few years since I've read all that stuff. Anyways, she goes off to Troy. Menelaus goes to his big brother and says, I got to get her back. You know, she means the world to me. Agamemnon raises an army. They've got to sail to Troy. To get on their boats, they're getting ready to leave. No wind. Nothing to fill the sails. They can't leave. Agamemnon is told that the gods say you must sacrifice your daughter in order to get a fair wind. He really doesn't want to. He hems and he haws and he hesitates and he waits. And finally he gives in. He sacrifices his daughter. Her name is Iphigenia. Euripides will write a play called Iphigenia at Aulis. That's the place where she sacrificed. Okay? So, 10 years go by. Trojan War happens. The Greeks win. Trojans are destroyed. Agamemnon sails back home and is welcomed by his wife and his nephew. Now, unbeknownst to Agamemnon, his wife has been shacking up with his nephew. Like, from the moment Agamemnon left, and had been plotting his death upon his return. Okay? He comes back home, and he's getting ready to get off his chariot and march into the palace, and they roll out something. If you watch the Grammys, if you watch any music awards on TV, or any film awards on TV, what do the so-called celebrities walk on? Before the stage. Outside. Red carpet. Why? Why do they walk on a red carpet? Why is it never a blue carpet, a green carpet, a yellow carpet? It goes back to ancient Greece. This red carpet goes back to ancient Greece. Only one class of individuals was allowed to walk on the red carpet. Gods and goddesses. When they took human form. The red carpet, it's a mark of divinity. Okay? So knowing that, when Agamemnon rides up to here, so to speak, in his chariot, his wife has the chariot stop so that when they fold the steps out, there's a red carpet. And he's like, no, I can't do that. If I step on that red carpet, what does that symbolize? What would he be equating himself with or to? To gods. And he knows humans don't imagine themselves as gods. Because if they do, the gods are they're gonna take you out. But his wife cajoles and pleads, and he does it. And he walks down that red carpet, and he goes into the palace, and she and her lover kill him in bed. As he's getting into bed, pull out the long knives and stab him. Okay? So, I think that is behind when Oedipus says, was he killed in the palace? Okay? But it's an important detail because walking on that red carpet, one of the terms I did mention in that video lecture is an indication of hubris. We hear that every now and then in the popular media and such. What's hubris? It's pride. What kind of pride? I mean, you can be proud of doing a job well done. You can be proud of, athletic prowess. You can be proud of, being a good student. You can be proud of being a good worker. Whatever. This isn't that kind of pride. Let me use an athletic example. This is the kind of pride that says, I'm the greatest of all time. Because what inevitably happens, somebody else comes along better. Right? Was Michael Jordan the greatest of all time? Some people would say no. Was Babe Ruth the greatest of all time? No. That's ascribing to oneself kind of godlike capabilities and tendencies. You're always going to get slapped down for that. Okay? So, he asked about, where did it happen? Crayon says, wasn't here. He went to consult an oracle. That is, he went to where to go? To the oracle of Delphi. And never returned. No messenger? Nobody who was with him survived? He says, no, all were killed but one. What do you mean? He says, no one survived. No, all were killed but one. So that original no is not quite true. Yes, one did survive. But we're told he escaped, terrified. He could tell us nothing clearly. It's like he had PTSD. Okay? He could tell us one thing. What? Thieves, plural, attacked them. A whole band, not single-handed. Cut Laius down. A group of men killed him. Okay? Listen to Oedipus's response. A thief? Thieves, not one, hacked him down. A thief? Does he have a hearing problem? So daring, so wild, he'd kill a king? Impossible. No. He had conspirators. See, what Oedipus does is he takes the thieves, multiple, and he says, no, there was one person who did the deed, but he had help here. In other words, there were people in Thebes, not thieves, Thebes, that were plotting against him. On what basis does Oedipus make that comment? What's the source? What's the evidence for that assumption? There is none. He is jumping to a wild conclusion, or wildly jumping to a conclusion. That is an aspect of Oedipus's character, by the way. Okay? So, Crayon, yeah, that's kind of what we thought. We thought there were probably conspirators here, but, we couldn't know for sure. And without Laius here, he says, there was no one to lead the investigation. Oedipus, your king was murdered. What stopped you from tracking down the killer? That can be referring, what stopped you, Crayon, from doing this? Or it could be, what stopped you, all the people? Crayon, notice, has a good answer. The singing, riddling Sphinx. She persuaded us to let the mystery go and concentrate on what lay at our feet. In other words, it's like the moment Laius dies, the Sphinx appears. What does he mean? She persuaded us to deal with the problem laying at our feet. According to the story, you couldn't leave the city. You couldn't go out the city gates without the Sphinx attacking you. Pretty much, that problem gets set aside because the Sphinx is a more present problem, okay? So, Oedipus says, I'll start again, meaning I'll start the investigation again. I'll bring it all to light myself. And he introduces these kinds of themes. Light versus dark, sight versus blindness. I'll bring it to light. I'm going to shine a spotlight on it. Okay? He says, so let's get back to the problem at hand. He says, now you have me to fight for you. I am the land's avenger by all rights. Okay? He says, I'm going to do this, not to assist some distant kinsman. That's dramatic irony. He doesn't think he's any relation to Laius. The audience knows he is. No, he says, but for my own sake. Why? If there's somebody who would kill a king once, what's going to stop him from killing a king twice? Okay? So he says, by avenging Laius, I defend myself. So he tells the priests and the children to get up and such. The priest gets the children up, and we get the first chorus strophe. First chorus song. Strophe merely means when the chorus begins down here, it's standing at one side of this circle. And it says its lines while it slowly moves across the open space. And it stops. And the Greek text actually indicate these two terms, strophe and antistrophe. And then it moves back. And the antistrophe is when it walks back to the other side. Okay? That's all those two terms mean. We get a big long speech. What's the purpose of the chorus? It's a speech, by the way. It's not a real song like we think of. The chorus does two things. It comments on the previous action, kind of interprets it for the audience, and it sometimes brings additional information that might kind of foreshadow later stuff. Well, it talks about the gods here. It talks about angering the gods. And it also emphasizes towards the end of its speech a particular god, Dionysius or Dionysius, the god whose festival the play is being performed at. So this is kind of way of offering, something to Dionysius. Oedipus comes out. He hears the chorus. You pray to the gods, let me grant your prayers. What is that an example of? That's getting really close to that hubris thing. That pride bordering on, real arrogance. Right? He says, come listen to me, you'll find relief, and I'll lift your head from the depths. She has a long speech. He says, I'll speak now as a stranger to the story. This is line 245 and following. Stranger to the crime. If I'd been present then, there would have been no mystery, no law. See, and everything he says in this speech is tragic or dramatic irony. He was present. He did cause it. He wouldn't bring it to light. Okay? So he then finishes the first part of the speech. and he kind of makes an offer. If any of you knows who murdered Laius, I'll order him to reveal the whole truth to me. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to torture you. I'm not going to imprison you. I'm not going to beat you. Okay? Even if you have to denounce yourself, that is, if you're the murderer, here's what will happen. You'll be banished. You'll just be exiled. You can go live in Corinth or another town. And he stops. He waits for a reply. Nobody says anything. Okay? So that's the first chance. If anyone knows that the murderer is a stranger, a man from alien soil, speak up. I'll give you treasure. I'll give you a reward. And he takers, and there's no response. But if you keep silent, if anyone panicking, trying to shield himself or friend or kin rejects my offer, then this is what I'm going to do. Okay? So the first option's done. Second option's done. This is now the third. This is what's going to happen if he finds out one of them either has done it or knows who's done it. I order you, every citizen of the state where I hold throne and power, banish this man, whoever he may be. Never shelter him, never speak a word to him, never make him partner in your prayers. Your victims burned to the gods. So, okay, maybe you don't want to publicly admit something. If you know who that person is, you don't give that person any help, any aid, any shelter, ever. You don't speak to that person. Well, in a relatively small city-state in ancient Greece, it's going to be clear pretty quickly which person is being shunned by everybody. And thus the murderer will be found out. So he says, 278, So I honor my obligations, I fight for the God and for the murdered man. Now, my curse on the murderer. So here's what's going to happen to the murderer. Whoever he is, a lone man unknown in his crime or one among many, let that man drag out his life in agony, step by painful step. I curse myself as well. If by any chance he proves to be an intimate of our house here at my hearth, with my full knowledge, may the curse I just called down on him strike me. And you have to imagine the audience sitting down out here, hearing that, goes, oh, damn. Because everything he just said, because of their knowledge of the story, is going to fall on him. Everything. Guess what? Oedipus at Colonus, the events in that play don't happen till a long time. He does make his way through life in agony, step by painful step. You know, I mentioned he dies at the end of that play. And you literally, well, with your mind's eye, you see the character of Oedipus die and then kind of rise up into the heavens using, or via, that technique that's mentioned in the book, the Deus ex machina. God, literally, that means God from the machine. The gods raise Oedipus into a god. And they do that solely for one reason. No one has ever suffered as much. No human has ever suffered as much as he. And they're kind of like, because he has suffered so much, he should be like us. Which is kind of odd because in the Greek system, the gods don't suffer. I mean, they get angry, they get pissed, they get jealous, all that kind of stuff. But they don't suffer per se. Okay? So, notice, if by any chance he proves to be an intimate of our house, that is, he's well known inside our house, that means the whole palace. But then he narrows it down to our hearth. That's only the people who get to eat with Oedipus, with the king and queen. Close to him, okay? So he says, here's the orders. I command you for my sake, for Apollos, for this country, to do all this. And then he calls on the gods. I'm skipping a bit. Go down to 301. Man, can't go back to 301. Go down to 293. A man so noble, your king, brought down in blood, you should have searched. But I am the king now. I hold the house that he held in. I, throwing that in, possess his bed, and a wife who shares our seed. Why, our seed might be the same. Children born of the same mother might have created blood bonds. He has no idea what he's saying. And the audience is going, oh yeah, you do share seed. You don't even know. The woman who's produced your children is your own mother. He says, so I will fight for him as if he were my father. Stop at nothing. Okay? So he pronounces his curse, and they start to talk about how they can go about finding the solution. And Oedipus says, in response to the leader of the chorus, line 333, there is someone who can help us with this. The blind seer Tiresias. Oedipus says, I'm one step ahead of you. I've already sent for him. Okay? Line 341. Tiresias comes in. Okay? Tiresias is not a character that Sophocles invents. Tiresias is another one of these mythic characters. He shows up in Homer's The Odyssey in the underworld, the place of the dead. Odysseus goes down and talks to the dead, and there's Tiresias, all right? Tiresias, as I said, is a blind seer. Notice the paradox. He's blind physically, his eyes are gone, okay? But he sees with his mind. He has perception. He's a prophet. Here's the kicker about Tiresias. In all of Greek literature, when Tiresias is mentioned, he's never wrong. He was never once wrong. If he foretold something that was going to happen, it always happened. So a prophet is a foreteller, tells the future, and a fourth teller tells the truth. That means, the second one, what's the phrase that's often used today? Speak truth to power. This is the guy who isn't afraid to speak the truth to whoever has all the power and authority. Okay? He comes in. Oedipus makes this big long speech, praises him up one side and down the other. And Tiresias' first response, how terrible to see the truth when the truth is only pain to him who sees. What does he mean? He's not talking about seeing the truth with these. He's talking about seeing the truth up here. And he's saying, I see the truth, and it's painful. Let me go home. Just send me home. 364. You bear your burdens, I'll bear mine. It's better that way. What burdens does Oedipus bear? The burdens of ruling the country. What burdens does Tiresias bear? The burdens of knowing the truth. Oedipus. Well, that's strange. You would withhold the word of God. I fail to see that your own words are so well timed. I'd rather not have the same thing said of me. What? For the love of God, don't turn away. Not if you know something. We beg you. All of us on our knees. And I think that means Oedipus drops to his knees. Tiresias, none of you knows and will never know, and I will never reveal my dreadful secrets, not to say your own. See, the difference between this and the minister's black veil is Tiresias sees behind the black veil. Why? Because the God sees all. Oedipus, you know and you won't tell. You're going to betray us. I'd rather not cause pain for you or me. Notice how every time Oedipus says something, notice how Tiresias responds. Does he only speak about himself? He always draws Oedipus in. He always says, I suffer. You're suffering too. I know something about you. Okay? So, we'll stop with this. Tiresias says, you'll get nothing from me. Nothing? Out with it once and for all. You criticize my temper, unaware of the one you live with. You revile me. Unaware, what does that mean? Where is it? Blind to the one you live with. In other words, you don't see the one you live with. Okay, we'll stop there and we'll pick up on that spot on Friday. Remember, exam due Friday night, and I'm going to put up probably today or so a quiz over the background stuff to drama and probably about the first 500 lines of Oedipus.